Hello and welcome to the Tennis Podcast live from Wimbledon. I'm Catherine Whitaker, this is Matt Roberts, this is David Law, this is Jude the Bear, and this is our incredible crowd. You can't see them, but I promise you they are there. You can hear them. Some of them are wearing merch. It is an incredible showing. I suddenly had a moment of nerves earlier on today about what I'd said in our previous couple of shows about a crowd potentially gathering. I thought this is like when you leave a pause for applause in a speech. It's a risky business, but of course our wonderful listeners haven't let us down, and we're overwhelmed both with love and with beers, which is a good place to be on day one of Wimbledon, quite frankly.
Beers bought for us by Bianca, which is a good tennis name.
Yes,
it is.
More on other Biancas to come in this show. The big news from today, aside from the tennis, is that David is now a gilet guy.
I know. I've gone 50 years of life without wearing a gilet, and now I've got one on.
And it suits you, David.
And I really like it.
It really does.
Yeah,
David was in the Wimbledon shop underneath Court 1 earlier on in the week during our supermarket sweep episode in there, debating whether or not he could pull off a gilet, and Matt and I held his hand and encouraged him and told him, yes, you can be a gilet guy, and here he is. I think you can all agree. David's a gilet guy.
Yeah. And you never go back.
Apparently not.
Yeah.
Apparently not. You can tell a dog owner from a non-dog owner by whether or not they own a gilet.
And which one is it?
Dog walkers have gilets.
Oh, do they? I better
Yeah.
get a dog then.
Great news for David's kids.
Right.
Great news for David's kids. Yes, I digress. Everything we're wearing, from the waist up anyway, is... Everything we're wearing from the waist up. Oh, it's a catchy promo. It's from the Wimbledon shop. They've got wonderful stuff in the Wimbledon collection. They ship worldwide. They have the newly refurbished Court 1 shop. So if you're coming to Wimbledon, if you're lucky enough, make sure you check it out. If you're not coming to Wimbledon, shop.wimbledon.com. You can get hold of anything you like, and they ship worldwide, and it is all absolutely lovely. Let's talk tennis. And we are going to talk about the tennis that's happened today. We've had Ben Shelton down here finishing up just moments ago, called off for bad light. We've had Jannik Sinner getting embroiled in a 4-setter over on court number 1. That only finished about half an hour ago, and plenty else besides. But we do need to start with some news that dropped before any of the tennis started today, and that is the withdrawal of Aryna Sabalenka. She kind of signposted that this might be happening in her pre-tournament press conference a couple of days ago. She said today that she's tried everything, but she was risking further damage by playing, and she's unable to play the tournament. And of course, her withdrawal after the draw means that this opens up the entire bottom half of the draw, and as is quite often the case with these situations, it feels like it's had a knock-on impact today with other players in that half of the draw, because quite frankly on paper this half of the draw was the weaker half anyway. It was the one with more opportunity in it, I think, for surprises. With Sabalenka gone, it is a true land of opportunity.
Yeah, I think I would call it the Coco Gauff half now. Like, she is the name that remains in that bottom half. You know, there's obviously plenty of other threats, but we're already guaranteed 2 first-time Wimbledon semi-finalists from that bottom half, which also means a guaranteed first-time Wimbledon finalist. So, you know, it really has opened up, and it's desperately sad for Sabalenka. I certainly don't hold it against her that she took until the last possible moment to make that decision. I know that some people always say it's best to withdraw before the draw, especially if you're seeded, because it can have this kind of impact. But, you know, it did sound like maybe she thought there was a chance she could play. In the end, she couldn't. And, yeah, it's tough. You know, I remember sitting with you both after the Australian Open, and we were talking about, you know, this is a big year for Sabalenka. Can she win another slam outside of the Australian Open? And we said she's so good on all the surfaces, she's going to have these chances. And she's been derailed at Roland Garros by illness, and she's been not even able to take to the court at Wimbledon because of this shoulder injury. So desperately unlucky for Sabalenka, and it definitely has a big impact on kind of just the feel of this tournament. Honestly, I felt that way even just in the press conference. I thought, well, I don't think Sabalenka's doing much at this tournament, and we got that confirmation today.
Who are the main beneficiaries of the Sabalenka withdrawal, David?
Well, I do think you've got to look at the other significant runners and riders like Coco Gauff, for instance, because I think that was a player who could have beaten her. And listen, Coco Gauff may not go all the way, but the way she just sort of handled business today, just classic her, really, isn't it? Just pressure's on. Does she wobble at all? Does she think about it at all? No, she doesn't even. I don't think she's given that a second thought. She's just gone out there and taken care of business and won comfortably. In an immediate round, you've got to look at the player that was sort of expected to play against her in the second round. And that was Donna Vekic. So.
Big pod for Pam. This.
Yeah, I mean, I already felt that Vekic, with her head-to-head advantage against Sabalenka, would have had a chance. She would have been the underdog, but she'd have had a chance. But really, you could have looked at Sabalenka as somebody to go all the way here. And for her to be removed and nobody else significant seed-wise to be put in her place, in what was already, I think, the weaker half of the draw overall, that, the top half feels stacked. And suddenly somebody is going to benefit from this big time, and I've got my theories as to who that might be. We can come on to that, but
I think that was the question.
Now feels like the time, David.
Look, the reason I hesitated is because we haven't gone on to talk about Emma Raducanu yet,
right.
and I am mindful.
Well, why don't we do that? Because look, Sabalenka wasn't the only withdrawal today. We also woke up, or were kind of walking in. Each of us, when we heard the news that Ekaterina Alexandrova, the 22nd seed that was due to play Emma Raducanu on centre court today, had withdrawn due to illness. Now, this wasn't something that was signposted at all. This was a real shock for everyone, a shock for Emma Raducanu, who said she got this news at 10:30 after days of preparing for a very particular type of player in Ekaterina Alexandrova. And it's safe to say that the lucky loser, Renata Sarasua, that came in to replace her, different kind of a player entirely. 7-6, 6-3 this victory for Raducanu today. Just her second win at Wimbledon since 2021, since she became a Grand Slam champion at that US Open. It was nervy, it was tense. For a set and a half, it was not free-flowing Emma Raducanu, but it was gritty Emma Raducanu, and she played an impeccable tie-break in set one, and her shoulders did open, didn't they, David, midway through that second set, and she was really starting to tee off.
She was, but it was very interesting listening to Laura Robson, who I was alongside in the commentary box for BBC Radio 5 Live, talking about how she enjoys playing against players like Alexandrova, who give her pace, and so that she can redirect that pace. And the ball's coming on to her. Suddenly, she was playing against a player who does the exact opposite of that, who played a really good match and was just lulling her into all sorts of off-pace shot rallies, and then suddenly throwing one through with some speed as well. I think she probably played pretty much as well as she can play, and Raducanu did not quite know how to play it. I think she sort of tried to dig in and rally with her in deep rallies early on, and just sort of, she used the word winning ugly. And then when she got that ugly first set on the board after well over an hour, she then tried to tee off, and she did it to some success. But the fact is that she doesn't really have that kind of dead ball power. You give her, like Sabalenka, you give her any old ball, she doesn't need you to hit it hard to her. She can go and hit a winner off it. Raducanu's heaving the ball to try to get some of that, but she prefers it when the pace is generated for her already. And I thought she did really well to get through it. And look, I put her, when I did my predictions this morning for the tournament, I put her in the semi-finals, Raducanu.
Wow.
And I realised that is, sounds quite far-fetched, but it was based on the idea that I just couldn't see Sabalenka playing, or certainly not being a feature. And, well, who do I actually think is the best player in that half of the draw apart from Coco Gauff, who in this on this surface in this environment? And it's Raducanu. And I will say that if she doesn't do that, this should be, and if she loses in the next round, I have no issue with it. I'm not going to sort of think, oh, she's let herself down or anything like that. I've said end of next year is when I'll take a view on how her career's going. But I think that there's a window of opportunity there for her.
Well, so Lise Mertens in the next round for Raducanu, and that it was interesting that Laura Robson said that, because that was kind of what I was thinking. You know, she's changed her technique a bit on her forehand, hasn't she, Raducanu? And that's always been the shot where she's maybe struggled to generate the power herself. And
there's a lot more shape on it, isn't there?
Yeah, and I still think that she isn't really creating that power herself. And Elise Mertens is a player who knows how to mix it up, play with variety, and, you know, give her off-pace balls as well. I think that's a real test in the next round for Raducanu. But, you know, sort of going back to the who benefits from Sabalenka being out, the thing about Sabalenka is she's been such a banker to reach the quarters or semis of, you know, all the slams really for a couple of years. She's been so consistent. So it, you know, as David says, that section now that she's gone, it feels like everyone in there has an opportunity to reach the quarters or semis. You're saying Raducanu. I think the name I'm most looking at is the Eastbourne champion Kasatkina. You know, beat Raducanu pretty handily in Eastbourne. I realise in very windy conditions, which I think favoured Kasatkina, but she's now in an opportunity where that's a nightmare matchup for Kasatkina against Sabalenka.
It's like a Goff-Swiatek situation for Kasatkina.
Right. Suddenly the big obstacle's cleared, but, you know, at the same time, there are going to be players who could attack Kasatkina's second serve on this service. I still feel like she is a little bit vulnerable sometimes, but there's such an opportunity, and absolutely Raducanu is one of the names I'm looking at, Kasatkina as well, and honestly, Donna Vekic.
Who's in your semi then, in that half of the draw?
I went Kasatkina.
Right.
Yeah.
What did you go?
I can't remember. I have Raducanu in the quarters. I have Andreescu in the quarters.
Yeah. Massive surprise.
I had Mira Andreeva.
In the semis.
Would you like Erica?
Certainly in the quarters, yeah. Turns out I got the wrong Andreeva.
Because actually the biggest beneficiary I thought might be Mira Andreeva.
Right.
Turns out literally might be Erica, because she came in as the lucky loser and won.
Yeah, so I made my predictions, I think, assuming that Sabalenka wasn't going to play, or if she was going to give it a go, would be massively diminished. So I did it's a bit of a jungle, my women's draw, this bottom half of the draw, and look, there are going to be some surprise names there. It's just kind of potluck whether you're the person that's happened to have gone for the right surprise names. But I mean, obviously it will surprise no one that I couldn't resist Bianca Andreescu. But yeah, look, there are names in there that have done well in lead-up events, crucially. Diana Schnaider, Donna Vekic, the champions from Bad Homburg, both came through tight three-setters today and could easily have lost. You know, you do see that from players that have great weeks the week before.
And that's why I hesitate about Kasatkina, you know. I mean, it sounds counterintuitive. You think the player who's won before, but I'm never entirely convinced by that. But I agree with you. Those were good. I mean, particularly Schneider. I mean, to beat Pliskova.
And to win the week before and then have to play Monday. So she won the title Saturday. She's got a Monday start at Wimbledon, and she's got a flipping Karolina Pliskova waiting for her. That's a real nightmare.
Yeah, and she's a set down.
Yeah,
you know,
and you're thinking, oh, for goodness sake.
and then she held from love 40 at 4-all in the third set, and that was the crucial moment. And they hit over 70 winners between them. You know, it was a high quality, big hitting match. Yeah, I'm so impressed by Schneider and by Vekic for bouncing back from Bad Homburg, you know, so quickly. And just while we're on Kasatkina, not to sort of hammer home the point and pick on someone when they're down, but the stat of the day is kind of a big tennis record has been equalled today, and that's.
Matt's been dying to talk about this. Matt doesn't
I feel
really
bad
want to
in
talk
a
about
way.
any of the other tennis that's happened today. I was doing the agenda and I was like, okay, have I got all the big stories here? And he went, you've got Zhang Shuai, right?
Come on.
Off you go, Matt.
Well, I feel bad, and I sound really mean for bringing this up, but she has now equalled the longest losing streak in tennis history. You know, that has belonged to Vincent Spadia for a long time.
That's tough, isn't it?
21 matches Vincent Spadia lost in a row on the ATP tour, and Zhang Shuai has now equalled that on the WTA tour. She equalled the WTA record in February, and she's now up to 21 losses in a row. Her last win was against Madison Brengel in January 2023.
Oh, goodness.
Like, it's brutal, absolutely brutal, and yeah, I don't know how you get out of that unless Greg Rosetsky comes along.
Well, I was around Vince Spadia. I was on the ATP circuit as a communications manager when Spadia was in that run, and I do recall. You know, we have to write these media notes for the journalists, and I actually wrote a little segment in there about his losing run.
Did you get in trouble?
Yes, with him.
Oh,
He took you up on it?
Yeah.
really?
I mean, and to be honest, I did feel bad about it afterwards. I mean, I just thought I was, providing information.
So Zhang
What did he
Shuai is
say?
coming for me
Did
tonight.
he tackle you in person?
Yeah, he said, "Who's done this?"
And what did he say? Some guy, some other guy.
I said, "Me." He goes, "What you do that for?" Well, because it's true. And he said, "Aren't you guys are supposed to be bigging us up?" And I
You said
said,
there's nothing. Give me the materials to work with, Vince.
"I did. I mean, I was 24 or something, and I was new. And I'm not. Listen, I still stand by it. Like, these are the facts, right? But I did feel bad for him at the same time.
And then
But,
along came Greg Rosetsky.
I think it is it's tough. It's a tough sport, this, and how do you get out of these troughs? And yeah, I mean, he ended up playing Greg and getting a win when Greg was having a bad time. I hope she can break it soon. I really do.
Roughly how old was Spadia in that period
He'd
of
have
his
been
career?
mid-20s.
Okay, because I mean, Zhang Shuai's mid-30s.
Yeah, this could be,
There's a
okay,
chance
I'm going to
she-
stop now.
Right,
Stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah, it really is. Andreescu won today, if it isn't obvious, 6-4, 6-2. She's got Linda Noskova next. As we've been hinting at, Brenda Fruhvirtova beat Mira Andreeva today. Andreeva was a set and 3-love up. 6-1, 3-love up was Mira Andreeva, whereas just to sort of complete the Andreeva circle, Erica Andreeva came in as a lucky loser to replace Aryna Sabalenka and won today.
Wow.
None of these were things that I thought were going to happen.
And there were a lot of people withdrawing today, creating a lot of lucky loser situations.
Yeah, we had Elsa Giacomo coming in for Victoria Azarenka at the very last minute. She ended up taking on and losing to Sloane Stephens. We had a couple on the men's side as well. There have been a lot of very last minute withdrawals. I imagine there have been a lot of potential lucky losers sort of hovering by the sign-in sheet ready to go, because it honestly can be as raw as that. It can come down to, it's like Race Across the World, who can get to the notepad and pen quickest.
I still think it's
crazy.
a horrible thing to call them. You're a loser and you're lucky. Why
What
can't
would
we
you
come
call
up
What
with
would you say?
understudy? I've been thinking about this
For how long?
for years.
Okay.
It's always bothered me.
I thought you might have come up with something better if that's the
on,
product
that's
of
not
several
bad.
years' thought.
Anybody else got any suggestions?
I
You
agree,
usually love alliteration, though.
I agree, lucky loser's brutal, but I don't think understudy is the one. Anyway, staying with this bottom half of the women's draw, so opportunity for Raducanu. It wasn't her best today, but honestly, I think this is actually quite a big win for her mentally, because thinking back to that press conference she gave a couple of days ago, it felt very much a script for her to deliver the message. It almost felt like something from the election campaigns that we've been witnessing here over the last few quite painful weeks, of the messaging. The key messaging that I've got to deliver today is that I'm the underdog in my first round match. I'm playing really well, but that does not mean that I'm going to win my first round match, and don't read too much into it if I don't. And I completely endorse that sentiment, but that was the messaging, and it completely got turned off on its head when she ended up facing Sarasua rather than Alexandrova. That's a completely different mental prospect, and most of the people watching are, this is Wimbledon in the UK, majority casual viewers. The tennis diehards will know what's what, but most people are going, who's this Sarasua girl? Oh, she only got in at the last minute. She couldn't even win through qualifying.
She'll beat her easily.
Yeah, exactly. It's a completely different prospect, and
she
didn't play her best, Raducanu, and I think that's big, that win.
Got the job done, and I realise I've said I think she can reach the semis, and because I've got to go for someone, and and that's how highly I rate her. But if she loses to Elisa Mertens, it's okay. It's okay. She's been to a Grand Slam semi-final before. She knows what she's doing on a court. I still think Raducanu will find a way through that too.
Just one thing on Raducanu. I was really impressed by her baseline game today, and I do like what she's done with the forehand. Yes, there were. It led her down at moments, but you change your technique on something, that's going to happen. She was poor at the net, really poor at the net. 7 out of 23 points won at the net, and it was quite glaring. And Sarasua really cottoned onto it as a tactic. She was playing a lot of not particularly great drop shots, but all it took really was to draw Raducanu in, and that was the point over. And look, when you're nervous and tight, the touch is something that goes. So I cut her a bit of slack on that, but that is just an area of worry for me, because her movement looked great, I thought, but if you're great moving up to the net but you're poor when you get there, that's kind of not a great trade-off.
Yeah, I mean, you watched this match more closely than I did, but I really sensed that Sarasua was using the drop shots and bringing Raducanu in, and I think there is a difference between coming in on your terms and coming in on your opponent's terms. Like, I think it's easier, obviously, to come in on your terms and kind of set up the volley that you want to hit. But absolutely, if that's an area of weakness and players are starting to exploit it, then that is something that Raducanu will need to improve. There was a lovely sort of counter drop shot that she hit in the final game, where Sarasua had drop shotted her. She got there and sort of counter drop shot cross court and let out a big roar, and that was kind of the moment that I think she knew the match was won, kind of at that point. Okay, she
felt like a big release.
Absolutely, and because it was a tactic that had worked for Sarasua, and this time it was Raducanu getting the better of it. It felt like a big moment.
It did, but I think it felt like such a big moment because of how few of those she'd had. As soon as she ended up at the net, you kind of got a feeling of doom for her in your stomach. But she did really well in that moment, and look, I've got her in the quarterfinals, so you're not alone on the hype train, David.
Catherine and I were sitting together this morning, and we were both talking about how we just end up going with kind of like our hearts. Things that we'd quite like to see happen, or people that give us the vibes.
Yeah. Andreescu in the quarterfinal is very heart over head, isn't it? Yeah. But maybe not.
Good win.
Well, when she was 2-1 up and having a trainer out for a wrist, I really feared the worst for her. But I didn't see a ball of it, and the scoreline suggests it went quite well.
She was good when she's just teeing off and not thinking about it, and in that free-flowing state, she's something to contend with. It's finding that freedom, isn't it? It's what Vondrousova talked about yesterday. Once you've done the thing, you're never free again.
Yeah. It's very profound.
Brutal.
Do you know a name that we haven't talked about from this half of the draw that played today?
Naomi Osaka.
Indeed.
Tell me.
She won today, 3 sets over Diane Parry on court 2. Matt's take on this match on our WhatsApp group was, that match was a disaster.
I genuinely didn't know who'd won for quite some time, because the first message I got about this match, which I didn't watch a ball of, was Catherine saying, I've just seen 6 points that have made me think that Naomi Osaka's going to win it all.
Right, Matt and I arrived towards the end of the first set, and sort of the first 2 games that we watched was Naomi Osaka playing the sort of tennis that she played when her back was against the wall against Garbine Muguruza at the Australian Open. What year would that have been? 2021. That surged Naomi Osaka, just redlining it, hitting the ball as sweet as a nut, and everything going in. And I was just, we were rocked on our heels by it. When we sat down and we looked at one another and went, "Oh my God!"
It was unbelievable.
It was unreal.
11 winners to 0 in the first set.
And the tide had
Osaka
started to
Parry.
turn by the time I had to leave to attend a Daniel Medvedev press conference. More on that later. But Matt stayed the course, and it sounds like that might have been a bit of a bullet dodged for me.
I was really excited about this match. I love watching Naomi Osaka, and I really like watching Diane Parry. She's got a different game to a lot of people, but it was like flavors that just don't go together. Like, it was just like a weird. It just didn't work as a match.
Sultana in a salad.
It just did not work.
Not partial to a sultana in a salad.
No, I mean, that's a line from the thick of it, but I also don't think sultanas belong in salads. Anyway,
Okay.
as you were.
And honestly, my take on the match has slightly improved, having listened to Naomi Osaka's press conference, because
Has she gaslit you about it? Has she told you it was great?
she said, "I didn't play bad." I was thinking, definitely saw you playing badly for a long portion of this match. But there were just so many errors from Osaka, particularly on the forehand through the all of the second set, start of the third set, and then she got back into it. But occasionally she would catch fire with a good return or two. But mostly it felt like she got back into it because then Parry started not playing very well, and the final game Osaka won was 3 double faults from Parry, including on match point. It honestly reminded me of the first round of the French Open, where Osaka beat Bronzetti in 3 sets, and when it was good that day, it was very, very good, but when it was bad, it was awful. And
I wonder why that is. I wonder why there are such extremes to her game.
well,
There's no margin.
there's no margin.
She's
is there?
absolutely foot to the floor, which is just irresistible when
Yeah.
it's on. But it's either sublime or bad.
But coming into this match today, she'd been 1-5, 1 win, 5 losses in deciding sets this year, and that 1 win was the French Open first round. So I think it's big for her to get a 3-set win. She said she just hasn't been winning that many. That used to be a real trademark of hers. She used to win a lot of 3-set matches, but on her comeback this year, she hasn't won that many. And honestly, if the French Open told us anything, it's that Osaka can improve from one match to another. Because the match she played in the second round against Iga Świątek in Paris was levels above the match she played in the first round against Bronzetti. So it's just important to get through this, and then I think the level can improve, because there is some fantastic tennis in there. We saw it, and we saw it very dramatically in that first set, and we saw it a little bit for the rest of the match. But just important to get through it. Didn't enjoy the match. It was just hard to focus on, because there were no rallies. It was just either, to begin with, mostly winners and then mostly errors, kind of, and it's just hard to kind of get your teeth into it, even though the crowd were pretty engaged. But yeah, I was kind of disappointed by the match, but really pleased that Osaka gets through it and gets a chance to kind of grow into the tournament.
Her first win at Wimbledon in 6 years.
It's mad. It's absolutely mad.
Who's she got now?
It's the first time It's the first
Got
time.
Emma Navarro.
Yeah.
Oh my, that's a tough
It is
one.
tough.
Huh?
And maybe that's why we're not talking about her yet as a potential beneficiary. in that half of the draw. I think come through that one, and it's like, okay.
She'll have to play very well to win that, because
Yeah.
I don't think you can ride out the peaks and troughs against Navarro in the same way. She's not going to give you those errors, is she? She's going to make you play. So Osaka's going to have a good day there.
There was one other very interesting line from the Osaka press conference where she said that she feels like overall now she's a better athlete than she ever has been. She says that she's training and not having pain. She said she used to have kind of pain when she was training, but she says she feels kind of better than she ever has, and that's part of the reason I think why she's been able to play so many tournaments. I mean, she's barely missed a week really on tour this year. She's played whenever she can, and she says that you don't have to constantly revisit the past. She said that the way she wants to play now is an evolution of what she was before. It's not like going back and being that player again. It's being a new player, and yeah, I love the perspective she has right now, and I kind of agree with her. I think the great tennis feels so close. It's just a little bit of luck in a draw, and a little bit more consistency. But I'm really encouraged by the kind of trend that Osaka seems to be on.
Wonder if they'll give her a big court soon. Because
where would you put Osaka Navarro?
Well,
in a half? Bear in mind, scheduling on Wednesday. There's not going to be a Sabalenka. She
Yeah.
was scheduled on one today, and they ended up having to do a rejig. Madison Keys ended up on there. What would you do with that match?
I'd give her one of the top two courts against Navarro, who's who's a very decent player, and a 19th seed. I think that should be central one.
And I think it will. Like, there's going to be 3 women's matches on Central 1. Goff, you would imagine, would take one of those spots. Raducanu, you would imagine, would take one of those spots. And then it's kind of Osaka, unless they go Andreescu, Noskova. But I think
To me,
you'd probably
that's
go
court two.
Osaka.
Andreescu Noskova feels court too. I agree. Easy to get in the press seats for me as well. Okay, on to the men's draw. And I think that the headline I've got here is that Berrettini Sinner is on in round 2.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten that.
and it's funny that kind of Matteo Berretini ended up being the guy that made it most securely. Like when Matteo Berretini won, I wrote Matteo Berrettini, Jannik Sinner is on in my agenda, just assuming Jannik Sinner would get there.
Right.
He's not the problem for that match-up happening. And then suddenly Jannik Sinner gets embroiled in something from two sets love up against Daniel Altmaier late on court 1 this evening. Dropped the third set to him. Altmaier's redlining.
You've mixed up your Germans.
Oh, it's Yannick Hanfmann. I do have a bit of a Yannick Hanfmann, Daniel Altmaier problem.
I was just nodding along.
It was a Yannick off.
Oh, if we weren't live, it'd be edited.
Daniel
wouldn't it?
Daniel
You'd save
Altmaier
me.
was losing 2-1 against my pick for the day, Arthur Ferry, at one point.
I'd love to say it was the beer, but I've done this before.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have done it more than once before.
At least Blake
Right.
Shelton's still in there.
Yeah, Yannick Hanfmann. Where was I? Dropped the third set. Hanfmann is redlining. Sinner is slipping and sliding all over the place. Does not look comfortable at all. Now, albeit really regrouped in the 4th set, it was pretty comfortable for him in the end. How much do we read into this? The blip today.
To me, it felt fairly contained within this match. Like, I started to worry about him a little bit, honestly, because he slipped in the 2nd set, and it was one of those falls where his legs went one way and his body went the other. The classic grass court fall. And he was clutching his hip after that and stretching it out. And he came through that 2nd set, but then he really tailed off in the 3rd, and his attitude kind of tailed off as well. He started slumping and getting a little bit upset. And Hanfmann, I have to say, played a brilliant 3rd set. Really, really good. Fantastic. Thoroughly deserved to win it. And at the end of that 3rd set, they decided to close the roof to make sure that they finish the match, rather than having to stop midway through because of darkness. And Sinner was really quite irritated that they were having to wait for the roof to close rather than carry on playing through the roof being closed.
That's interesting.
And I think it's kind of a difference, because I've certainly been on Ash when they've carried on playing and the roof has closed, sort of mid-point.
Which is weird, isn't it?
It's weird. It is weird.
For everyone, yeah.
And Sinner was saying that at the French Open there seemed to be some kind of agreement that if both players were happy, then they would play while the roof is closing. But here at Wimbledon, the policy seems to be, no, we're waiting for it to close. And Sinner's issue was that he was going to have to come out to serve after that roof closure, and he thought that he'd be cold, after 8-10 minutes or whatever that it takes for the roof to close. They kind of compromised and said you have to wait, but they did let them practice some serves while the roof was closing. And then Sinner regrouped and played a pretty impressive fourth set to win it. But there was definitely a moment of danger, with a peaking opponent, a slight concern over an injury, and a frustrated Sinner that we don't usually see. But he gets through it, and before everything, before kind of the slip, he'd been really impressive to begin with. So the great tennis is there, and I'm not too worried. But it was definitely a moment where I thought, okay, like I'm on Jannik Sinner watch for the evening, because this is a little bit dangerous.
How much danger do you foresee against Matteo Berrettini then?
I could definitely see Berrettini getting a set. Like, I think with that game, those weapons, his confidence on this surface generally, I think he will test Sinner, I really do. But I think Sinner comes through.
I could see more than that.
Oh, it's Wimbledon again. David's high on Matteo Berrettini. It's all coming back.
Unlike last year, I'm not picking a victory for him, but I think that could be a proper 5-setter, absolute classic that Sinner extricates himself from. That's what I don't expect him to lose. I expect Sinner to win, but I really think he is, to me now, he's, particularly on the grass court, he's the Karen Khachanov and then some, in terms of the obstacle you've got to get over if you want to win this title.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, and look, a year ago Alcaraz turned it on and Berrettini couldn't keep up with that. So there's every chance, of course, that Sinner might just turn it on, because he's got an upper level that Berrettini doesn't have. But Berrettini has two big weapons that can keep him in sets and get him to tie breaks. Don't forget when he beat Alcaraz at the Australian Open, he just sort of edged him. But I still think Sinner will win, but I think we could be deep into the fifth set.
It's funny, I tuned into the Matteo Berrettini press conference today, and there was a line of questioning about Jannik Sinner and the next generation of Italian male players. And I felt really sad for it. I thought, oh my God, that's tough for you. Like, he's not even 30, is he? Like, I think quite far off from 30, actually. 28, 27, something like that. Maybe he's 29. I don't know. He's not 30 yet. And, in terms of the canister...
Gentlemen, the grounds will be closing in around
15 minutes. Make your way to the exit gates and make sure you take all your belongings with you. Hope you've enjoyed your day here. Oh, he's choked.
It's broken. Well, carry on.
He's forgotten his words. The grounds will be closing in around 15 minutes. Make your way to the exit gates. I've done this bit. All your belongings with you. Hope you've enjoyed your day here. Oh my God, what's happened at Wimbledon?
Matt, go and step in.
What has happened?
They need you.
I was worried I might not remember it.
This has never happened before.
Well, given it's a recorded, isn't it recorded? It's a recorded message.
Did he only
right?
record half of it?
I think he's done his bit. I think the technology has failed. And why did
Enter Matt Roberts.
Is it raining?
I can't remember the end. It's one of those where I need the guidance and then I can remember it.
Is it raining?
No?
No. David, we are live.
I think it's raining. Excellent.
Well, we press on.
I'm worried about the crowd.
Um,
It is raining, but
Look,
let's carry on.
We deal with all
We don't
the
care.
slings and arrows of outrageous fortune here on the Tennis Podcast live from Wimbledon. We were talking about Matteo Berretini. And Matthew.
You need an umbrella.
Cameraman Matthew is demanding an umbrella. Look, let's talk about Matteo Berretini.
Absolutely.
Oh my God. 15 minutes. Please make your way to the exit gates and make sure you take all your belongings with you. We hope you've enjoyed your day here at Wimbledon and safe journey home. Thank you. Oh,
Thank goodness
finally.
for that. Dear, oh dear. One's enough, isn't it?
That took so long. The weather has changed. Right, what was I saying about Matteo Berrettini? He starts getting asked about the next generation of Italian players. He starts getting asked about the next generation of Italian players, and I'm thinking, God, this is tough, Matteo. And he dealt with it so well. You know, he starts waxing lyrical about Jannik Sinner and the depth of talent and how wonderful it is to see all of them coming through. And I thought that's lovely. Like, he dealt with it really well. No chip on the shoulder at all. But I do hope he walks onto, I assume it's going to be centre court for that match in a couple of days, and just has that in the back of his mind. You know, I love it when a player has a point to prove,
I think he will be.
whether they're channeling something irrational or not.
Yeah, I think he comes out and says, okay then, Sonny Jim, you world number one or whatever you are. I'm going to teach you a thing or two. I think he's going to come out and bring it. 100%. You know, we've talked a lot about Andy Murray and Novak Djokovic and the way they revere Wimbledon. This guy reveres Wimbledon in that way, and I'm sure many of them do. But remember when he was fresh off winning Queens and he couldn't play this? Do you remember that? You know, he got COVID, didn't he? And it was just such a sickener. And I remember
his peak curse.
Yes, and I remember
Berrettini.
asking him about that weeks later, and he said how ill he was and how sad he was about it. I mean, this guy knows his days as a top player are probably numbered, you know, and he needs to make every second count. And I think he's a real threat to Sinner if he's fully fit, and if he'd need to play really, really well, of course, but he's definitely got a chance.
How big a chance?
Well, like I say, I think Sinner wins in 5 sets, but he's definitely got, I don't know, 30% chance of actually winning the thing, maybe more. I don't know about odds, but you know, he's got a real chance.
Mark Lajal backed up his
He was fun.
his
He was great
Instagram
fun.
promises today, didn't he? 7-6, 7-5, 6-2 for defending champion Carlos Alcaraz, who said he was surprised by Lajal.
Follow him on Instagram, that's what I would suggest.
Yeah, look, I know a straight sets win for Alcaraz, but I feel like Lajal backed up his promises there. He made it interesting, he made it fun, he made it competitive.
No, he really did. He really did. It's funny, you know, I was talking to your brother just now, Catherine, before we came on air, and he knew all about Mark Lajal. He's seen him at the Challengers on the stream, on the dodgy, grainy stream, and I was thinking...
Yes, I'm the least informed tennis commentator in my family.
But he wasn't surprised that he turned up and played well. I mean, I just loved the way he walked out onto the court. I heard an interview he did on 5 Live before he came out. He'd done a BBC interview, and he was talking about how he discovered that he was playing Alcaraz. You know, he was in a car with his family, and suddenly he heard the news line, and he said the whole car erupted because it was exciting. And you know, here he is, same age as Alcaraz. He just came out and he took it to him, and he got the first break. You know, he breaks the guy for 3-2, I think it was, and then Alcaraz wins the next 10 points and breaks back, takes advantage. And then the same thing happened in the second set. Lajal gets an early breaker serve, Alcaraz immediately breaks back. I think it was just about, I mean, obviously Lajal wants to win, right? But effectively it's great, it's good for both of them. He's shown that he's got something to him, and Alcaraz has dealt with it, come through in straight sets, and he's had plenty of tennis. I think it's a good scene.
Yeah, Alcaraz spoke about exactly that difference, really. The fact that Alcaraz said he felt, some kind of nerves stepping out there, whereas Lajal didn't, in a way. And that's impressive from a guy who, had never been in anything close to that situation before, but he played with freedom. And that meant that it was a real test for Alcaraz. And there were so many times where I looked at the scoreboard and think, okay, now Alcaraz is going to take over and go on a run, and this is going to be over pretty soon. But Lajal kept it really close, and I was very impressed, and he was a fun time. It was kind of reminding me of Jesper de Jong in a way at the French Open. Alcaraz was a lot better today than he was in that match, but a guy playing Alcaraz who I'm like, oh, I didn't know that much about you before, but I'm really impressed by what you've displayed today, and I feel like Jesper de Jong can be ranked higher, and I think I would say the same about Mark Lajal.
Yes, I'd be very up for seeing more of Mark Lajal in the future and his excellent pineapple hair.
Do you think maybe your brother would know, but do you think his pineapple hair was
Wimbledon themed?
Because
of course there is a pineapple on the top of the Wimbledon men's trophy, singles trophy.
I really hope it was because of that. That would be a baller move, that.
I'll check with my Mark Lajal expert.
Got a Statue of Liberty on top of his head in New York qualifying.
We had a couple of top seeds on low-key upset watch, or various different keys of upset watch today, and both survived. Both survived and passed with flying colours. Casper Ruud beat qualifier Alex Bolt very comfortably, straight sets. Bolt has won more grass court matches this year apparently than Casper Ruud has ever played in his life. Ruud hadn't played any grass court matches coming in to this event, and Matt, you were hearing in his press conference afterwards, had been really quite ill during his French Open exit to Alexander Zverev, and for a while afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Really interesting from Casper Ruud that, I think we all thought, he's got a bit of a stomach bug during the French Open, and, Sabalenka was affected by something similar as well. We thought maybe there was just something going round, but Ruud has spoken in his press conference about the fact that he had some kind of parasite, and
it's not a good word, is it?
No, and was in bed for 10-11 days after Roland Garros, and couldn't eat, lost all his appetite, lost some weight, and they just didn't really know what had caused it. They thought, he was told it could be, it could have been water from a shower, or it could have been some fruit or something. He really didn't know, and kind of, I think it sounded like the medical team that he was speaking to in Norway as well weren't really sure either. And it was really rough for a long time. And look, I don't think he wasn't planning to play any grass court events before Wimbledon anyway, but this absolutely sort of wiped him out, and he's only been eating properly for a week or 10 days or so. I think that's a pretty impressive win, actually, against Alex Bolt, who, as you say, is a lot more experienced on the grass. And it was tight early on. I actually went out to watch the first set, and Ruud had to hold from love 40 at 2-all. And I think if he'd lost that game, we're potentially looking at a different match. But he won all the important points in that first set, and then was pretty impressive generally. It took him, I think, several match points to get over the line. But it feels weird because he's one of the higher seeds, but it feels like any kind of win for Casper Ruud on grass is quite impressive, really. And he is in a part of the draw that it's not filled with names. Like he could make his way through this draw. I think Tommy Paul would wait in the fourth round. That would feel like a real, possibly a step too far for him as an inexperienced grass court player as he is, but. If he could get there, that would be a really successful Wimbledon for him, and would kind of back up his approach, which is to use this period as his rest time. And look, I would love Casper Ruud to try and commit to grass and play more. Okay, maybe not this year because of the illness, but generally. But I also really do take his point that we are asking players to take rests and not play all the time, and he's pretty smart in terms of knowing the events where he is going to gain points, and he needs a break in the middle of the season, and he chooses to have it between the French Open and Wimbledon. And I do get that, given
it's no different to Iga Swiatek,
right,
in terms of the fact that she's, won the French Open and decided not to play. And look, I thought Alex Bolt would beat Casper Ruud. It's almost part of the bit, isn't it? That Casper is just not bothered. Well, actually, he is bothered about his performance. He might not approach it in the same way as everybody else. And in this particular instance, he's got a set of circumstances that are very different to the norm. But he's actually a really great pro, isn't he? He always gives himself the best chance of performing well. And fair play to him.
Straight sets for Daniil Medvedev as well today, David, on court 1, 6-3, 6-4, 6-2 against Alex Kovacevic. I didn't really have this on upset watch because Kovacevic hasn't done much.
Not having much of a year. He's not winning that many matches.
Against somebody different, I would have had Medvedev on upset watch, given what we've heard about his lead-in, how poorly he's been practicing apparently, although he very much downplayed that in press afterwards. He was bullish, I thought, actually, in press, and you saw a lot more of it than I did, David. You were in the commentary box, but it was quite a bullish performance.
Yeah, I mean, look, he was fine. He was fine. He hit about 15 aces, so he served. Kovacevic hit a fair few aces, but he didn't have that much opposition here, and for the most part, he did what Daniil Medvedev tends to do. He did also, when he was serving for the match, hit two of the worst serve and volley executions I've ever seen on a professional tennis court. The first one was a stop volley that went into the bottom of the net, and the second one was a sort of fly swat of a forehand volley that went straight down the middle and just asked for it to be put away, and it was. But he was experimenting by that point. He knew he was going to win the match, so he served and volleyed on every single serve. Fascinating to watch him try it. He's really not very good at it, but fair play that he's introducing that into his game. I mean, the interesting thing will be he could play Jan-Lennard Struff in round 3, and he could play Grigor Dimitrov in round 4. I'm not sure we're seeing him I don't think we're seeing him in the quarterfinals, really. But he's proved that wrong before. He's a world-class player who's just outside of the big three, effectively, in today's tennis. But he still doesn't look that convincing, I would say.
We did lose a big name today. First seed to fall of Wimbledon 2024, Nicholas Jarry. What have you to say?
Yeah.
Hang on, you're a Nicholas Jarry guy now as well.
No. That was pre-Corentin Moutet.
David's theory is that Nicholas Jarry has been ruined by Corentin Moutet in Paris.
Correct.
Well, he's lost in the first round of every slam this year, Jarry.
Has he?
Koboli, Moutet, Shapovalov, round 1 losses at the slams. Look,
I mean, Shapovalov's a good player on the surface.
They're all good players. I would say they're all a little bit tricky first round draws, but I'm not making excuses for my guy. Look, all the models were saying he wasn't going to have a run at Wimbledon this year. Wasn't my guy this tournament. Hadn't played on grass. Had been injured. Don't think it's that big a shock.
Okay, well, the last men's result
is he no longer your guy?
that I wanted. It sounds like he might be dropping him like a hot potato.
He's Maxime
Last men's draw I wanted to pick out. Frances Tiafoe coming from 2 sets to love down for the first time in his career today. 6-7, 2-6, 6-1, 6-3, 6-3 over Matteo Arnaldi. He's needed something like this, hasn't he? I don't know how far to go in terms of speculating about whether this could be season changing for Tiafoe, but it feels like if anything is going to turn the tide for him, and it really is going to take some turning, it will be a moment like this.
I think so. And go back 12 months, and I remember asking Matt Futterman of The Athletic whether he'd spoken to Tiafoe after his loss here, and he said yes, he had, and he'd been so down and so annoyed with himself and angry and cross with his performance. And I asked Matt Futterman the same question today, whether he'd spoken to Tiafoe after his win, and he said yes, and he described him as downright giddy.
Oh, wow.
Just kind of buzzing after that win. And this off the back of, falling 2 sets down against Arnaldi, who's kind of one of the coming players that a lot of people are talking about, myself included. I really like watching Arnaldi. And Tiafoe's playing with a, kind of a brace over his knee, a sort of sleeve over his knee that I think we'll see Djokovic in, because he fell on the grass the other week. So he came in with that injury doubt. He's 2 sets down. He's been 2 sets down in his career 18 or 17 times before and never won. And today on the 18th attempt he did it, and just the vibe was back. The crowd was with him, and he was expressing himself on the court. So I definitely think it was a very impressive win. I think I would need to see more to think that he's turned a corner, just form-wise, because his form's been bad. But again, some of his quotes afterwards, he said that last year he was 10 in the world and now he's barely seeded. He said, "I've been losing to clowns." He said, "I hate to say it, but I'm just going to be honest." And then he gave a really deep line saying, "I took the game for granted and got a little too comfortable."
I like that.
I think that's the first step, right? You've got to be able
like
to...
the clowns line, isn't it?
You do like the clowns.
I mean, it's quite funny, isn't it? I mean, it's a bit harsh, but it's funny.
Yeah, but I like the other line in terms of that feels like, recognising that maybe his attitude had changed a little bit is kind of the first step to getting it back, I would have thought. We've kind of missed Frances Tiafoe being the guy who brought the vibes and brought the energy. He's been a tough watch for a year now, and today was a great watch, and that in itself was a big difference.
I've just been looking up his recent losses to
see who he's describing as clowns.
Who he's describing as clowns. So Jack Draper in Stuttgart, Frances Tiafoe at the French Open, Arthur Rinderknecht in Lyon.
Who at the French Open?
Shapovalov.
Right, yes, I remember that now.
Dominic Kupfer in Rome. Federico Coria at a challenger in Italy.
Fair enough.
Madrid, Pedro Cachin.
Keep drinking, David.
Ben Shelton in Houston, of course.
Yeah.
Clowns, the lot of them. Christopher O'Connell. I mean, he's a sensation.
Wow.
New category.
Do you think they're
Clowns
all forming
category.
a WhatsApp group?
Yeah.
Clowns unite.
Clowns unite against Francis.
I mean, that will. I don't hate it, but that will get around the locker room.
You better sort of go on a bit of a run.
Yeah.
If you're going to say that.
I'd be wanting to back that up. Okay, I think that's it for tennis that's happened today. We promised you an Andy Murray update. There is no decision on whether he will play tomorrow. He's scheduled third on centre court. He did practice today. Stu Fraser of the Times was out there watching that practice. He said he was playing a practice match, by the looks of things, against Kyle Edmund, the British player who's been injury hit and very much in the doldrums for the past few years. He said the practice match came to an end with Murray leading 6-3 to love. Unclear why it came to an end. He said the movement is better for sure. And Stu said, my instinct is that he's going to play singles tomorrow, but we wait to hear.
Wow.
And we will be waiting until tomorrow morning, it seems. But if I had to place my chips now, they'd be on him playing.
Yeah, me too. I think if he can feel confident that he can at least get through a match. I don't think he's... I'm sure in the back of his mind he's thinking about winning it, but mostly he's thinking about trying to get through it and not injure himself and not have to have happened to him what happened to him at Queen's, where he has to retire midway through. If he can be confident he can at least get through a match, I think he plays.
He's scheduled third on centre court tomorrow. First on is Jessica Buzas Maniero taking on the defending women's champion Marketa Vondrousova. They walk out at 1:30. Then it is Vit Kopriva the Czech qualifier against Novak Djokovic with knee sleeve. What do you call a sleeve when it's on a knee?
I wondered that because it's I don't think
Brace?
it's a sleeve. I said brace as well, but that felt
It's a sort of a
That felt
different thing,
extreme.
a brace.
Needs to be a contraption.
I'm going to call it a knee sleeve and see if that takes off. Djokovic and his knee sleeve, second on centre, followed by Andy Murray against Thomas Machac. On court number 1, Elena Rybakina kicks things off against Elena Gabriela Rusa of Romania. Zverev is second on against Roberto Carballes Baena. Then Iga Swiatek against Sofia Kenin. And I just wanted to hover on that for a moment because of a line that Ash Barty delivered in commentary today on the BBC and on the World Feed. She was asked who, kind of out of anybody, she would consider to be a tough opening round opponent, and she said Sofia Kenin. She said that's a nightmare. So
Ash Barty's got me on Iga Swiatek upset watch.
indeed, me too.
Wasn't something that I was expecting.
Same, but here we are, Matt. Here we are. Aisling Kruger against Jessica Pegula on court 2. Andrei Rublev follows that. Then it's Jack Draper against Elias Ymer, and then the two-time finalist Ons Jabeur is fourth on. What do we think about Jack Draper on court 2 tomorrow? Because that, looking at Zverev on court 1, you could easily have had those the other way around and not thought anything of it. What do you think?
I'm a bit surprised. If you'd have asked me what I expected to happen, I would have thought the other way around. But then the guy is the 4th seed, and Jack Draper is not Emma Raducanu. He hasn't won a Grand Slam, so maybe that's fair enough, you know. But it's interesting. I'll be fascinated to see how Jack gets on out there, and I'm fascinated to see how he gets on the whole tournament. Really. I think he's a good story.
Hurkacz opens up court 3, then it's back-to-back Brits. Katie Bolter against Tatiana Maria, and Cameron Norrie against Facundo Diaz Acosta. Desperately needs a win, just Cam Norrie. Anyone, anytime needs a win. And then it is Danielle Collins against Clara Towson, 4th on court 3, very much circling that. And just a final match actually 2 final matches to circle tomorrow for the connoisseurs. Ayla Tomljanovic against Yelena Ostapenko is 2nd on court 12, and that's followed by Yulia Putintseva against Angelique Kerber. How's that for
Same
a double
court.
header? And then actually after that it's Dan Evans, Alejandro Tabilo, which, if Evans is fit, is fun. That's all on the same court.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I am slightly disappointed they haven't put Tomljanovic Ostapenko back on the aggro court.
But
that is a killer lineup.
You're just trying to recreate.
Yeah.
Aggro relived.
That's the place to be tomorrow. What a day it's going to be. Potentially the end of Andy Murray's singles career tomorrow. Just let that sink in for a moment. Yeah, it could be an emotional one tomorrow, folks. So let's wrap this thing up and get ourselves off to prepare emotionally for that. Maverick is our mascot for Wimbledon this year. German short-haired pointer living in Georgia, Chattahoochee, Georgia. Hello to lovely Maverick. We have our mascots, of course. David has Francis, Matt has Haider and Soma, and I've been so magnanimous waiting until this point to mention the fact that on behalf of the dearly departed Darwin, I scored 50 points on the opening day today.
Did you?
With Lulu Sun, the New Zealand qualifier, beating 8th seed Zhang Shuai.
Oh, that's annoying.
I don't think... full disclosure, I know not very much of Lulu Sun, but I do know that Zhang Shuai's game does not work on a grass court. Not yet.
Well
anyway.
done. Very pleased for you.
So we'll see. Billie Jean is sponsored by Billie Jean King and Alana Kloss. We, of course, have our top votes and executive producers, Jamie, Jeff, Chris and Greg. We salute you, and it's over to Matt for shout-outs.
We have Christiane Savoie in Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada.
Like Jacqueline Christiane that lost to Bianca Andreescu this
Catherine,
evening.
that is genius. Christiane, thank you so much for being a friend of the Tennis Podcast, and thank you, Catherine, for coming up with something tennis related.
Yeah, pleased with that. What do we know?
Christiane
About
has
Christiane.
a 3-year-old black and white Havanese.
That's the stuff, Christiane. Love that. Hello to you and your 3-year-old black and white Havanese.
We've also got Will Elliott in Georgia in the United States.
Oh, home of
And-
Maverick.
And this is a surprise for Will, because in the Tell Us About Yourself section, it says, "This is Will's wife, submitting Will's shout-out because it was a present for him."
Oh, what's Will's
Excellent.
wife's name?
Gretchen.
Hello,
Gretchen.
Will, and hello, Gretchen.
And
Gretchen's a name that doesn't exist in the UK, isn't it?
I would think that's correct,
Mm.
yeah.
Definitely
I like it, but-
Definitely can't think of any tennis players.
Yeah, just doesn't exist here.
No.
And Will
We're very boring with our names, really.
Will has gotten the whole family into watching and following tennis.
Oh,
Good work, Will.
that is a great service
Yeah.
in the family, Will. Hello to you. Hello to Gretchen. What a lovely thing to do.
And finally, we've got Sally Ann Dunn.
Hello, Sally Ann.
Right, Sally-Ann.
And Sally Ann has has written us a limerick,
Oh, now we're talking. Let's have it.
which I'm sorry, I'm probably not going to deliver very well.
Come on, Matt.
But the limerick is...
No pressure.
David, Matt and Catherine, oh what a team. Your tip-top podcast never fails to make us beam. With knowledge, wit and wisdom, you brighten our days. Bad predictions, 90 stories, stats and pets, just so many ways. Of 3 better pundits we really couldn't dream. Never stop doing your thing, or we'll all loudly scream.
Oh.
Sally Ann.
Good work, Sally
Yes,
Ann.
our
Good,
crowd-
isn't it?
Our crowd have
Sensational.
had to leave due to that announcement that they have to
Yeah.
leave, but let's have a round of applause for
Jude's
that.
pumped by that.
That's very special, Sally Ann. Thank you. And of course, with Anne in the name, that's same church, different pew for me, because Anne is my middle name.
Sally Ann says, I believe there's... I can't remember, but there's a link with Catherine's middle name.
Yeah. Thank you very much,
Absolutely.
Sally Ann. That is absolutely lovely. Thank you to all of our friends of the Tennis Podcast. Good things are happening on the barge, folks. Get yourselves over there if you want to become a friend. As always, the link is in our show notes, as are the links to dress like us, if that's what you fancy doing. Please do hit that like and subscribe button if you're enjoying what you're watching. It really does help us out, and it costs you nothing. So hit that like and subscribe button, and most importantly, join us tomorrow for our Day 2 Tennis Podcast live from Wimbledon. We'll see you and speak to you then.